Well, let's start. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming to this FBA exclusive event, to which there are many non-members from UK media and court reporters. We welcome you, but please remember that this is a foreign press event, and we will try to give a little bit of precedence to the foreign media first. I'm delighted to host this briefing with a Wikileaks panel, but not just, 1 week ahead of Julian Assange's extradition hearing, which starts on Monday. I am joined on my left by George Christensen, Australian MP, Queensland Nationals MP, Andrew Wilkie, Independent MP from Australia, Jen Robinson, who is the legal counsel and a human rights lawyer for Doughty Street Chambers. She is Wikileaks and Julian Assange's legal counsel, and of course editor-in-chief of Wikileaks, Kristen Hraffnson. So we're going to start with a few remarks from Kristen, and then we're going to go to Andrew and George, and then to Jen, and then we'll kick off with questions. When we have questions, please remind us who you are and who you work for, and keep the questions short, because there are many of you who would like to ask. At the end of this will last 1 hour, and then we'll have one-to-one interviews. So let's kick off with Kristen.
Thank you. Thanks for being here today. I'm always happy to be in a large room with colleagues, and especially from far and wide. I think the most gratifying experience in the last 10 years with Wikileaks was working on the release of diplomatic cables. We created an alliance with journalists all over the world, and I got to know and befriend many of them. It was heartening to recognize that despite different cultures, different languages, there was a core string among those journalists that I really appreciated. The same core values are alive among journalists, and those core values are being challenged in court next week in the Julian Assange case. You, of course, have been told that Wikileaks is not a journalist organization, that Julian Assange is not a journalist. Of course, that's absurd. Last night, some of us here on the panel were actually at the front line club watching the award piece that Julian Assange got in 2011, the Wilkie Award, the highest appreciation an Australian journalist can get in that country. It's the Pulitzer Prize of Australia. He received that award for the releases of information in 2010 and 2011, the same releases that are now being described as espionage, and he is facing indictment on the basis of the information that was presented about war crimes in Iraq, in Afghanistan, human rights abuses in Guantanamo Bay, killing of journalists and civilians, as was shown in the collateral murder video, etc. That is what the empire now calls espionage, but we all agree, of course, that this is simply journalism. A few things about what you will hear next week about wrongs will be about hacking and about harm. The lawyers acting on behalf of the United States will maintain that one of the indictments is about hacking. It is not. That label is a propaganda. The only thing you need to do basically is read the indictment to see that there's nothing to do with hacking. It is about normal communication, alleged communication between a source and a journalist. No hacking in place. Then there's harm. For 10 years now, we've heard voices about harm, 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 harm. It started with allegation in July in 2010, where heartbroken generals from Pentagon were accusing us of maybe already having blood on our hands of innocent civilians. I thought that was ironic for a person that we just exposed, having run death squads in Afghanistan, and we're about to expose all the unreported civilian deaths that they kept good record of in Iraq, all the war crimes that they were on their hand. The law was on their hand. But they have been talking about harm ever since. Now 10 years have lapsed. There has not been a single reported incident physical harm to any individual as a result of the leaks of 2010 and 2011. This is a highly politicized case, and it has been from the outset. It was political in 2010 when high-level officials in the United States and commentators called for the taking down of Wikileaks. It was political when people were calling out for the assassination of Julian Assange, which in light of recent events in Iraq, one should be taken seriously. It was political when Mike Pompeo, then CIA director in 2017, decided to depict Wikileaks as a non-state hostile intelligence service, something never heard before. We knew what that meant. That was a step in the direction to take down Julian Assange, to take down Wikileaks, to attack free press. The case was political when Pence traveled twice to a small country in Latin America, to Ecuador, to broker a deal which we believe is certain, the deal of the exchange of Julian Assange for $10 billion in debt construction or loans from the IMF and the World Bank. So this is a very political case. I've said repeatedly, Julian Assange is a political prisoner. This is a political case, and therefore, of course, we need to rely on politicians to turn this around. We need to rely on the public to be aware of the gravity of this case, and for the public to know, we need to rely on you, the press, to inform the public objectively about what's at stake here. I have been privileged to look into some of the arguments that will be presented in the court by Julian's defense lawyers, and it is absolutely certain in my mind, absolutely certain, there are some overwhelming argument for the dismissal of this extradition request. If it was simply a case which was decided upon on the merit of the laws, I wouldn't worry at all. But this is a political case, and what's at stake is not just the life of Julian Assange, who faces 175 years in prison if extradited. It is the future of journalism. That's how important it is. This is the gravest attack on journalism in lifetime in the world.
Thank you, Kristen. Andrew, before giving you the word, I just wanted to say that both Andrew and George are part of a group of MPs in Australia who've put together the parliamentary group Bring Julian Assange Home. Andrew, Wilkie.
Yes, George and I are co-chairs of the Australian Federal Parliament Bring Julian Assange Home group. We're quite a diverse group of Australian parliamentarians. Among us, there are people, politicians from probably the hard left through to the hard right and everything in between. And I think the fact that it is such a diverse group reflects the concern right across the political spectrum in Australia. Now, within our group, we have all sorts of views about Julian Assange personally, but they're not relevant. What brings us together and what we all agree on is that when you boil this down, the substantive matter is simply that Julian Assange and Wikileaks publicised information in the public interest, including hard evidence of US war crimes. And who of us could ever forget that remarkable footage released by Wikileaks of a US attack helicopter gunning down civilians in the street, including Reuters journalists in Iraq. That is information that was clearly published in the public interest. And it beggars belief that the country accused of war crimes is the country that wants to get their hands on Julian Assange, frankly, to get even. And it is regrettable that the Australian government and the British government so far have been happy to go along for the ride. It is beyond belief that someone who has acted so bravely, an organisation that has acted so bravely, should be rewarded by facing extradition and 17 counts of espionage and 1 count of computer hacking. It beggars belief that this situation exists in the world among developed countries at this point in time. I am very concerned at the behaviour of the British government. very concerned at the behaviour of the Australian government, who appear, or so far have been happy just to let events run their course. And I'll criticise the Australian government for not fighting to standing up for an Australian citizen in strife abroad. At the end of the day, Julian Assange is an Australian citizen. He hasn't been convicted of any crime, and we face this remarkable situation where he would be sent to the US, face 18 charges, could be tried in circumstances which we would all find unacceptable, and then be locked away for life. I think if this goes ahead, this will set a precedent that should alarm all of you in this room, every one of you, because this will establish a precedent that if you as a journalist write anything that offends any government in the world, then you face the very real prospect of being extradited to that country and being abandoned by your government. I think that doesn't send a chill down your spines, nothing should. And we are counting on the media now to inform the public of the facts. Because in my experience, when you sit someone down and tell them the facts, they put aside their personal views of Julian Assange and they agree that a great injustice is being done right now. George.
Well, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here and speak to you today. I'm a bit of the odd man out in this because there's a lot of people from the left that are supporting the Julian Assange case, but I'm one of those that Andrew probably would describe as being in the hard right. I'm a Conservative, Queensland National Party or Liberal National Party, and I'm a big fan of the Trump administration, big fan of Donald Trump, big fan of Bojo. But I tell you what I'm a bigger fan of free speech and a free press. These are the fundamentals of democracy and their values as a Conservative that I want to uphold. And they are clearly under attack when it comes to the Julian Assange case. I even love even more sovereignty. And the fact is, Julian Assange is an Australian citizen who is facing a foreign court right now, potentially to be extradited to another foreign country. And there's a lot of Australians on the left and on the right that think Julian Assange is a rat bag, right? I'm a rat bag, I love rat bags, that's great. But you know what? He's our rat bag. So he should be brought home. And that's, I guess, one of the fundamental reasons why we're here. We're also here to, I guess, hear the message directly from Julian Assange as to what he wants us to relay to the Australian government and to the Australian people. And also here as somewhat of a bit of a welfare check, because we're concerned about the constant reports we hear about his health situation, his mental state, and the things that he's been subject to, particularly the isolation, and we hear that in some cases that might be unwarranted isolation within HMP Belmarsh. So that is why we're here. It's about fighting for the tenets of democracy, really, that are under attack. And I would just say, Boris Johnson has spoken to Parliament recently where he said that he believes that the US extradition treaty with the UK is somewhat imbalanced. He's also said that the UK protects journalists and whistleblowers, and I commend him for that. I hope that there's a change of direction, and I hope that Boris Johnson actually withdraws this case that's before the courts, because there is a problem. The problem is, what if it was a British journalist or an outspoken British citizen, commentator, that went holidaying to another country that had an extradition treaty with China, and China wanted to extradite that British citizen, that British subject, to China to face charges? I'm sure that Britain wouldn't put up with it. And as an Australian, I don't think our country should put up with it either. Thank you.
Jen, over to you. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you to our visiting MPs for their work in the Australian Parliament for Julian. I want to make remarks on three different subjects. First, about a reminder about the nature of the publications and their significance, the publications for which Julian Assange now sits in Belmarsh prison. Second, I want to talk a little bit about the indictment itself and the precedent that this sets for all of you in this room and for journalists everywhere around the world. And finally, a few words about what to expect next week in the extradition hearing.
The publications for which Julian faces extradition are those that were released in 2010. We're talking about collateral murder, evidence of war crimes. We're talking about the Afghan and Iraq war logs, which showed the true cost of America's wars, human rights abuse, the failure of accountability. We're talking about Cablegate, the publication of US diplomatic cables, which was published in collaboration with Der Spiegel, Le Monde, The Guardian, El País, and hundreds of media partners around the world, including some of you in this room. So far, Julian Assange is the only person for which there is a prosecution in respect of these publications. But what will happen next? We learned from these documents evidence of human rights abuse, corruption, war crimes the world over, that the United States was spying on US diplomats, on UN diplomats. Amnesty International said that it sparked the Arab Spring. This material has been found by the UK Supreme Court to be admissible and has been cited in numerous human rights cases, here in the UK, in the European Court of Human Rights, and in the International Court of Justice. Wikileaks has won numerous journalism awards for these publications, which are of clear public interest and significance. As a human rights lawyer, they are a remarkable resource for those of us seeking to hold governments to account for the abuse against their citizens and others. They are the publications for which Julian Assange now sits in a high-security prison and faces 175 years in the US. What does this mean? If we look at the US indictment, this absolutely captures typical news-gathering activities that you engage in all the time. Receipt of information from confidential sources, communication with those sources about how to protect their identity and what material they might be able to provide. Publication of that material. As we've heard from James Good, our counsel for the Pentagon Papers case, this signals a death toll for national security reporting in the United States. The Washington Post and the New York Times has rightly called this the criminalisation of typical journalism activities. Alan Rusbridger, the former editor of The Guardian, who partnered with Wikileaks in many of these publications, described what has been described as Assange's conduct in the indictment as what all journalists would do, and in fact what any honourable journalist would do. This precedent means that any of you in this room, for publishing classified US information, truthful information about the United States, could face prosecution and extradition to the United States for having published that information. That is a terrifying precedent. I think we also need to think about why we are treating Julian's case any different to how we would consider what would happen if this was a British journalist or one of you in this room. What signal does the United States and the UK, by cooperating with this request, send to the rest of the world, countries like China and Russia? How would we react if one of you published truthful information about Saudi Arabia and then faced an extradition request to Saudi Arabia to face prosecution for having published that material? There would be outrage. A few words, finally, before we open to questions, about the extradition proceedings, which are due to open next week. Obviously, we can't get into the detail of the arguments, but a few words on what you can expect. We will finally be hearing the case of the United States against Julian Assange after almost 10 years of a criminal investigation. You can expect to hear arguments about the political nature of the offence for which he's been charged and the substance, the politicisation of his case. You can also expect to hear concern being raised about the free speech issues that I've just outlined for you here and the unbalanced nature of the US-UK treaty. It's important to remember that Julian faces a long legal process. His health has deteriorated significantly since 2010. He's been under some form of restriction on his liberty since 2010. These proceedings are likely to take many years and raise fundamental questions for all of you. So I think it's important that we remember what this case means, not just for Julian Assange, but for every single person in this room.
Thank you very much. If I can kick off the questions with one thing. The Ansakoulis case and the refusal of extraditing Ansakoulis back to this country, has that given you hope for Julian Assange Assange, given that it could be, maybe, I don't know, but used as a precedent? Are you going to be using that at all in the arguments? I know that there are things that you can't say, but I think a lot of us are wondering whether that could be a hopeful sign.
I think the case is an important demonstration of the imbalanced nature of the US-UK extradition treaty. That the US is refusing to extradite someone who is accused of having killed a British teenager in circumstances where the UK seemed ready and willing to extradite a publisher who has won numerous journalistic awards for having published information is a pretty stark contrast.
Thank you. Shall we take maybe 2 or 3 questions? If you want to direct your question to somebody, just say it and remind us who you are and who you work for. I'll start with Daniel, and then you and...
Daniel from the Swedish radio. I was just wondering if you could give us the facts. I mean, there are 5 days this week, and then there are some weeks in May. When will we know if there are going to be an extradition? Whether he would be extradited or not? And can you appeal that? And yeah, just give us the details.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Julia College from the News. Thank you for walking through most of your thoughts on how you oppose much of the language in the indictment whereby it touches on legitimate journalism activity. Can you walk us through your response to the language in the indictment that cites Assange's communications with Chelsea Manning about the computer hash and how you're quoting him saying that he has had no luck so far? So insofar as your argument that he did not commit hacking, how are you planning to respond to that language in the indictment?
And Claudia? Yes.
If you allow me 2 questions.
Sorry, who are you and who are you?
Claudia Ragazzi from CNN. In the last 2 months, there have been more concerns about Julian's health. What is the status, his condition at the moment? Has anybody seen him? And in court, you guys have brought the Spanish case as evidence of what's going on in this case. Has there been any progress in that for the first week of the hearings, or expect to know more anymore?
Who wants to take those? You, Jan, Kristen?
Sure, just briefly. So there'll be 1 week of hearings starting on Monday, the 24th of February. You'll hear largely the opening from the US and our defence response, including some legal arguments. There'll be a further few weeks of hearings in May, at which the evidence will be heard. We have the Assange extradition team has already served more than, and already indicated in court that we more than 20 witnesses, more than 15 of which will be giving live evidence. We will find out at some point after that whether there's a decision to extradite, and of course we expect an appeal either way, and the process could take a number of years and find its way in the UK Supreme Court. There was another question about the indictment.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get too much into the facts of that, and certainly not how it will be presented in court, but of course, perhaps Kristen can speak more to that. This is really a question of the typical kinds of communications that a journalist would have at their source.
Yes, I mean, what is described in the alleged discussion that you referred to is simply a speculation of access to material that the source had access to anyway, but in such a manner that the source could be safe. So there is no hacking, there's no hacking allegation in the nature of how it's presented. That's what I said at the outset. Of course, you could call an expertise in computer science to actually just tell you that. Many have, but we've done so. There was a discussion about the outcome and the appeal. You didn't mention that, but it is going to drag on. I mean, late, not next summer, early fall, probably will be the result from expert court. We assume the decision will be appealed, whichever way it will go. So that will add about another year. And the Supreme Court. So this could be a very, very long battle. Extradition cases, the previous one that have been high profile, have taken years to finalize. There was a question about Julian's health. I think I saw him about 10 days ago. He has improved, thanks to the pressure from his legal team, mostly behind the scenes, from the general public, and amazingly actually from other inmates in Belmarsh prison who have on 3 occasions petitioned the government to get him out of isolation. So there's more humanity actually among hardened criminals in Belmarsh prison than you find on the outside. He was released out of that isolation or de facto isolation in the health week and has now better access to his lawyer, even though it's not sufficient today. Limited telephone service. He still doesn't have any functioning computer. But the outrage is this only happened about 2 weeks ago. So since April 11th, he has been having to, as I tried to prepare for the case of his life, defend his life under absolutely absurd circumstances. It's only about 2 months since the lawyers could actually leave papers with him. So this is simply absurd. And don't forget that we have a person here who is on remand. He is innocent. He has served this ridiculously long sentence for skipping bail, which we of course argue was simply using his protected rights under international law to seek asylum. So he's an innocent man sitting in a maximum security prison here in Britain, trying to be prepared for his defense, the most important case of his life, and for journalism in general. So it's unacceptable how this has been progressing.
And thank you for raising this Spanish case. So, many of you in the room will be aware, but there is ongoing criminal proceedings brought by Julian Assange in Spain in respect of what we have learned about the fact that the security company inside the Ecuadorian embassy was recording all of our meetings, including our legally privileged meetings with Julian Assange, including his meetings with doctors, and we were handing that material over to the United States. This is obviously a fundamental breach of his right to a defence, including spying on my meetings with him, in which we were discussing his legal defence and other legal matters associated with Wikileaks. This is a serious breach of legal privilege and a serious breach of Julian's rights to a defence. These facts will of course be relevant and are going to be raised in the context of the extradition proceedings and go to and speak to the abusive process that Julian Assange has faced to date and the abusive process that we would expect from any US prosecution.
Should we take some questions from that side? Catherine, you and
Catherine Brunville, German media. I'm just wondering, the perception of Julian Assange in the case is very different in the US and in the UK, by the British public, by the media, than it is, let's say, on the continent. Can you elaborate on that? Why do you think that actually the case is wrong?
okay, let's take a second question. Yeah.
Hi, Kim Hong from USA Today. I was wondering if you could give some thoughts about what you think might happen if you win the case.
Speak up a little bit. Yeah, sorry.
Some thoughts about what you think might happen if you win the case. You know, if Mr. Assange essentially become a prisoner of the UK, if you try to go back to Australia, perhaps the authorities there would be some retaliation to a new extradition request from the United States. So just any general thoughts on the next steps.
Back to
Marcus Hraffnson, Neue Zürcher Zeitung. Two small questions, if I may. One, when did he serve out his sentence for skipping bail? Because as far as I remember, he was sentenced to close to 1 year, and that would have been in May, I think. And second, about his conditions in jail, can you say a little more? What kind of communication has he access to? And does he get exercise and stuff like that? I mean, physical condition.
you want to start? Kristen?
Well, he has limited access to telephone in prison. I just out 3 years. nature. I'm not fully, I don't think he has access to any exercise facilities. I don't think he has access to exercise facilities of that nature. Just to outline sort of the restriction he was under until just 2 or 3 weeks ago. The corridors were emptied whenever he had to go from one place to another. So I mean, there was everything was done to limit his interaction with other inmates in prison. That has now slightly changed. He is in a ward with 40 or 50 inmates. So there are some 40 or 50. So there is some relaxation.
Yeah, sorry, we seem to have a few problems with your volume. Master, can you just turn it up a little
The
bit?
sentence.
He served that out in I think September 20th, or around that time, late September. Even though it was 50 weeks, he served half of that time, which is not normal. So I mean, formally he had finished serving that sentence in late September.
What happens if he wins?
Yes, I mean, if he wins, I mean, I would assume the opposition will appeal, so that would prolong the process. I don't know whether they, we just assume that will happen. About the speculation about him being sort of locked in here, not being able to go to Australia, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the legal situation there and the possibility of...
Well, on the trial, an ex-infantry officer, not a lawyer, but I'm sure Jen will correct me, there is a concern that if Julian succeeds here in the UK and defeats the attempt by the US to extradite him to the US, he might then be deported to Australia. The concern there is that the agreement between Australia and the US is much more loose than the agreement between the UK and the US. And that's why it's so important. And in fact, when I say more loose, I understand that although you cannot be, in theory, you can't be deported from the UK to the US on political grounds. You could be deported from Australia to the US on political grounds. And that's why it's so important for the Australian government to come out and express its support for its citizens. Because until the Australian government does come out publicly and say it supports Julian Assange and it recognises that a great injustice is being done, until it recognises that what's going on here is a journalist, or at least a publisher, facing jail for doing his job, until we get that assurance from the Australian government, we will have no comfort that the Julian Assange matter will be ended by him coming to Australia.
Your question was an excellent one. So the outcome of any proceedings, if extradition is refused from this country, does not protect Julian from extradition from any other country in the world, only here. That means he is at risk if he travels and is at risk even if he returns home to Australia, which again underlines the importance of the United States withdrawing this request. This is, of course, part of the Trump administration's war on journalism, an administration that considers the media, all of you, the enemy of the people, and stopping this in its tracks in the United States is the best possible option.
The question from the difference, why is it so different from the continent?
Different perception, well, I think each and every one of you probably would be better to answer that actually. I mean, where does public perception come from? It comes from media and how Julian and Wikileaks are being portrayed in the media. There has been quite a low level of hostility in the UK media. I find that even though that is gradually changing, but the media environment it has been different. There was a change, of course, a few years ago in relation to the election in 2016 in the tone of media coverage of Wikileaks and media. So I mean, it is being guided somewhat by the media how public perception is. So I mean, there is a huge responsibility in the which has only been emerging in the last few weeks. It has been reported in everybody's to something, and it is remarkable what has happened. Spying on legal and privileged communication in the embassy, and bear in mind who backrolled this. That was Adelson, the biggest financial backer of the Republican Party, and Donald Trump. And the person that Mike Pompeo has now reportedly gone to ask him to backroll his attempt to get a seat in the Senate next fall. So that was financed by this casino magnate, the biggest single financial bank of the Republican Party, and the material handed over to U.S. intelligence. That only came to light in the last few months, and that came to light after Syed Javid, then Interior Minister here, Home Secretary, signed off on the extradition. So, I mean, in my mind, there should be ample new evidence to consider on the political front, because this is so outrageous, for, as you mentioned, for Boris Johnson to be considered to basically take back that sign-off on the extradition. One would consider, and it came up last week in question time, Prime Minister question time. Jeremy Corbyn asked Boris Johnson about Julian Assange. He didn't want to go into specifics, but he said, I am committed to protect journalists and whistleblowers. Now, this is a very good opportunity to basically put it to them, and maybe you will, and your conservative friends, to show that in action what that really means.
Can I just say on the perception issue that I know it's not a question asked, but in Australia and perhaps elsewhere as well, there's two perceptions, or should I say myths out there. One, Julian Assange is not a journalist. That's been raised before by others on the panel. I think he is. Australian journalists think he is. They gave him the Wilkie Award. But it doesn't really matter whether he's a blogger, a journalist or a publisher. The issue is free speech and the right to publish. The second is the inference that he's a hacker and has somehow reached into the US to do something illegal. He hasn't. That is the facts. He hasn't. Someone reached out and gave him information. So these myths absolutely need to be busted. And more than that, to go to the other question about what might happen in Australia, as Andrew said, there is that risk that there could be another extradition case heard in Australia. We don't want that. And I've got to say, I'm firmly of the belief now that our extradition treaty with the US needs to change, and there'll be views, so I'm a member of the government of Australia, there'll be views within the government that I put forward. We need to ensure that our extradition treaties with any country, no matter who it is, protects freedom of speech and press freedom. They are fundamentals. And I've got to tell you, we rejected a treaty with China, and you know, the government that I was part of was considering that a few years ago, and I was part of a group of backbenchers that severely opposed that for those reasons. So the same reasons with China should apply to our extradition treaties with other countries, including the US.
Can I sorry, I'll take the opportunity to make the point that yes, there's a broad range of views in the community and among officials about Julian Assange. And over the years, there's been all sorts of allegations, innuendos, stories, disinformation. Please remember, the US extradition is based on a very narrow snapshot in time and on very narrow matters. And we've got to stay focused on the facts and what the extradition is about. The extradition is simply and only to do with Wikileaks revelations during 2010 and 2011. It is only to do with the release of information about the war in Iraq, about the war in Afghanistan, about the circumstances in Guantanamo Bay, and the embassy cables, I understand. That's all it is about. So if we are to treat Julian Assange fairly and justly, we have to look at the merits or otherwise of the US complaint simply about those matters. And when you drill down, you boil it down to its very essence, That's all it's about. And the challenge for people like George and me, and I suggest for the media, is to educate the public that that's all it's about. And when you consider that, all Julian Assange and Wikileaks were doing was releasing information about those matters in the public interest as a publishing house, as a journalist, and as George says, Julian Assange is a Wilkie Award winner in Australia. So many people regard him as a journalist. And when you drill down that narrowly, you really can see in very sharp contrast what the offence or what the injustice is.
Let's take 3 questions now from that side. I've seen you were there. Any more questions from that side? Gosh, you're shy. We're going from May to you and Paul. So let's start with you, sorry.
Hi, I'm Martin Silk from Australian Associated Press. I just wanted to ask, Gareth Pearce in court mentioned that due to Julian's lack of access to his lawyers, it might be a case of judicial review. I just wondered why that wasn't going ahead now, or why you decided not to go ahead with that, and how much access Julian's had with his lawyers to go over this case since he was first arrested.
Okay, shall we take the other 2?
Bénédicte Pavieux, France 24, pardon. What is Julian Assange's frame of mind currently? How is he looking at next week? Also, will he be attending in person every day, and will he be testifying?
Thank you, and Paul.
Paul from the Global Mail Canada. Presumably, the hearing now is about extradition. It's not about the merits of the case per se. Canada is facing a similar type of situation with Huawei executive China doesn't want to extradite to the U.S. shipping out to Canada. But are you really saying that U.S. courts can't handle these cases? That the U.S. he would not get a fair hearing in U.S. court? Are U.S. courts the same as China and Saudi Arabia?
First, the question about access. So our access to Julian has been consistently either delayed or difficult, whether it's about our ability to get prison visits, the time we have with him when we get the prison visits. Often I'll sit there for half an hour or longer into a 2-hour visit because they haven't brought him down yet. So what should be a 2-hour visit is significantly restricted. We were not allowed to give him handing papers in prison for a very long time, and as you mentioned, as a result of the work of Gareth Pearce, some of those restrictions were lifted and we're now able to hand him papers. There's also been difficulties of access to a computer for him to be able to prepare what's an incredibly complex and complicated case with a huge amount of evidence. So it has materially affected his ability to be able to prepare this case and properly defend himself. There was a question about the prospect for a fair trial in the United States. We are obviously very concerned about the politicisation of this case, and we say that he would benefit from the First Amendment. That's part of the reason why this extradition request is so dangerous.
Can you turn on the cameras? Can't hear her.
Sorry, I have to be quite quietly. I was answering the question about the process in the United States. We are obviously very concerned about the politicisation of this case and the prospects of whether he would get a fair trial in the United States, including arguments that have been mooted by people like Mike Pompeo that the First Amendment does not apply to Assange and to Wikileaks. These are very serious matters, which is why we don't think that he will have to face this process at all in the United States.
And there was a question about the state of mind. Do you want to do this question?
Yeah, maybe I'll add a little bit to the question about fair trial. I think it's absolutely impossible for you to get a fair trial in the United States. Impossible. And one of the reasons is that he will be tried with a jury pool of people very likely associated directly or indirectly with the establishment. The courtroom is a 10-minute drive from CIA headquarters, State Department. It's the heart of the community that where his reputation has been sort of tainted in public mind. It's impossible to get a fair trial. And another issue that pertains to the First Amendment protection, Mike Pompeo said he's not a journalist, so he's not, he doesn't, there's no right to First Amendment protection. But even more so, this is being argued in shocking revelation, especially before a president or everybody in the room, actually, if you're a non-US citizen, as a journalist. We're now facing that sort of theory that foreign nationals, foreign journalists do not have First Amendment protection in the United States. At the same time that they claim extraterritorial rights, so they can hunt down journalists anywhere in the world, foreign nationals, and bring them to the United States without this protection. That is chilling.
This goes to my point, Kristen. I mean, you know, I made the point about him being extradited before and going into the US. The fact is that he's an Australian citizen, that a British court is deciding whether he should be extradited to another foreign country. And there's something inherently wrong with that, as far as I'm concerned. But the second issue really is to do with the extraterritorial nature of the alleged crime. I mean, what does the law of America or any other country now apply right across the world? Sure, if you're actually really hacking, if you're doing something reaching into a country, there is an issue. But when you're just simply receiving information, you know, how is that on earth a crime? How can you commit a crime when you're not even present in that country to commit it? So that's my issue. The issue of fairness in those courts is another matter, and I've got some doubt about this, you know, spy court that he'll probably face. But these are the essential issues. He's our guy. He's an Aussie. You know, what's a foreign court doing trying to extradite him to another foreign nation? What's a foreign nation doing targeting an Australian journalist like this, telling us that he's committed a crime when he hasn't even been in that country to break that law? It's ridiculous.
Sorry, the frame of mind, and is he testifying?
Well, in terms of his frame of mind, I want to recognise that we have Julian's father in the room, John Shifter, who is the best place. If I shout, perhaps you can hear it.
Yes.
In terms of Julian's frame of mind, I think the best person to be able to speak to it, I would also like to recognise that John Shifter, his father, is here with us in the room, who visits him regularly in prison and has been in Europe doing advocacy efforts on his behalf. So I think he's best to speak to on that point.
And the testifying, sorry, will he be present?
He will be present in court and we'll have to wait to see.
Thanks, John.
Okay, next set of questions, and then I think that we can wrap it up. I'll do Julie, Maria, and I don't remember you again.
Julie, freelance journalist from China.
Really speak up a lot.
Okay, Julie Zhou, freelance journalist from China. My question is about, actually we discussed the focal point about the definition of journalist. So do you think it should meet two conditions? One is it's for public interest, but who can judge it's for public? Is it from the will or from the effect? And the second one, if that method should be legal, and will the government have the authority to define if the journalist or whistleblower, they need to use a legal method to get access to information if they public in a, like New York Times or the other, you know, the media, is it okay? So I think the focal point is this: if just not just for Julian Assange case, in the future, how will Wikileaks continue to work? Will you prepare for next case similar to Julian Assange?
Okay, that's one question. Maria?
Yeah. I'm Maria from the Russian news agency RIA Novosti. Just wanted to clarify one thing. As I understand, as you said, the whole process will take a few years. So could you please clarify where will Julian Assange be during this time? I mean, of course, he's in current imprisonment limited time, so what will happen after that? Will be there in bail hearings, or how is it going to be?
Yes, we have a good one from Computer Weekly. Are you able to comment on the extent of the surveillance that was carried out in the Dorman Embassy and its impact on legal professional privilege, and then what that means legally for the extradition, and whether Julian Assange democracy the first trial in the US?
Let's start with...
Well, I mean, the question about who is a journalist and the public interest issue, I mean, we live in the changing world of journalism, and there are when I started 30 years ago, there were still some leftovers of typewriters in the editorial office. Things are changing fast. But we don't have to speculate about it. I mean, at least the Union of Journalists should be able to recognize who is a journalist and who is not. Julian Assange has been a journalist, part of the NEAA, the Australian Journalists Union, for more than a decade. He is recognized by the International Federation of Journalists, which actually has supported him and are outraged by what is now happening. So, who is to decide who is a journalist? Well, I can simply answer this. I do not accept that I have to go to the power holders, to Mike Pompeo, to Donald Trump, to Boris Johnson, to get permission to call myself a journalist. That's not where you seek that definition. That is not right. That would not be a healthy world to live in for any reason.
There's been a problem with this, who defines what a journalist is? Do you need a degree? I was a former journalist actually before I went into politics. Do you need to work for an agency? So therefore, does it mean that a freelancer isn't a journalist? What are we now prescribing? There's going to be some government body that sets up a report if you're actually a reporter. It's nonsense. There's citizen journalists out there that run blogs online. They're journalists. You're quite clearly a journalist. Those are the people that work for Wikileaks. You report on matters that are of vital information to the public. So it's a nonsense, this story about whether he's a journalist or not.
Can I add that as important as the definition of journalism is and how central it will be to the court case, I think, there's a bigger, more important issue is, did he do the right thing?
Yeah.
He did the right thing. Information came into his possession, establishing US misconduct around the world, including hard evidence of war crimes, and he released it in the public interest. He did the right thing, and that's got to amount to something as well.
If I may add, basically, on the journalist question that I found hardly amusing, even though it's a very serious matter, that the High Court here has basically defined Julian as a journalist, and Wikileaks as a journalist organization. Other judicial bodies here, like the Information Tribunal, has acknowledged Julian as a journalist and Wikileaks as a journalist organization. Last summer, in a dismissal of the case of the Democratic National Committee against Wikileaks, the judge in New York acknowledged that Julian was a journalist and Wikileaks a journalist organization, and actually added that what he was accused of there was perfectly protected First Amendment action. And finally, in a military intelligence report that was leaked to Wikileaks and was published from 2009, Wikileaks is called a journalist organization and Julian a journalist. So even in their own dark system, they do acknowledge this, even though there has been a change of tune lately for political and propaganda purposes.
There was a question on what happened to him. Where is he going to stay overseas?
It's very likely because of it's very likely as a result of bail conviction that he will remain in prison. We've seen that several judges have denied him bail, but that's a matter that we'll keep under consideration and review. It's obviously not a happy prospect for him to be looking at a process that could take many years and remaining in prison when his publisher has published information for which he's won awards.
The judge in that case said about the events that you were talking about that it was fully protected publishing activity under the First Amendment. People had the right to know what was going on behind the close curtains of the biggest political parties right before the election. That's sort of verbatim what I was reading from the judge there. And he said, it doesn't even matter if the material that was in question was illegally obtained to begin with. That didn't change the fact that there's a fundamental right and public interest to publish it. So I urge you to read that. It's a very clear dismissal, and it was a dismissal with prejudice, so the case cannot be brought up in other jurisdictions in the United States. And as I say, it's one of the most underreported media stories of last year, and should be of interest to every journalist and to the public.
It's a shame that because of that, some on the left have actually abandoned Julian Assange, and we certainly see that in Australia at least. But that's absolutely right. I mean, those DNC, Desta files, public knowledge. He reported on it. Might have impacted upon Hillary Clinton, but so be it. That was what her campaign people were saying. And, you know, the truth comes out.
In fact, if anything, the reporting of the DNC emails is further evidence that this is a journalist. He's a journalist, and Wikileaks is an agency of journalism. That they don't pick and choose. They don't pick winners, pick losers. They don't take political sides. They publish information that comes into their possession that they think is in the public interest. I can't stand Donald Trump, but I think Wikileaks did the right thing by publishing that information.
Not publishing that information would have been constitute a very serious bias, actually. And for some reason, I've been trying to fathom this among journalists, but it has been creeping into the circles of journalists that they should actually step back right before elections. I was raised under the assumption that journalists played a crucial role in the electoral process. They have, especially before elections, a duty to expose the facts about the political parties and the political individuals in question. Only a few weeks ago, Wikileaks was publishing information about corruption in Namibia, in Africa, 2 or 3 weeks before the election. It was crucial to get the information out before the election because it implicated 2 government ministers who are now actually in jail facing corruption charges. So where did that sort of come into play, that journalists should stay away from elections? That is outrageous. I mean, that is simply our role to inform the public about the choices that they are faced with. And I hope you all agree.
Can he be extradited? I think there was a question about, it's important to remember from the extradition process, this is not a full criminal trial, so the evidence is inherently limited. But I urge you all to wait and see how it's presented next week, because I think it's important, and I hope that through the presentation of the case, that people will finally understand what this case is really about.
And can he be a bargaining chip in the future US-UK trade deal?
I have no idea. I've been following the case here of the horrible case that you mentioned at the outset, the Harley Dunn case. It must be worrying that Mark Pompeo simply says, no, we are not going to hand over the person, the alleged killer of this young boy to face trial here for the alleged manslaughter. At the same time, Mike Pompeo is demanding an hand over to Julian Assange. The disparity in the relations, in the extradition relations between the 2 countries on the basis of a very disputed treaty that has been enforced for less than 20 years, I believe. The disparity is I think, numerically, please don't rely on me as a source, but I read this somewhere, that for every 1 American that is extradited to face trial here in the UK, 10 UK citizens are extradited to the United States. So I mean, there's something fundamentally wrong there, and it has been acknowledged by both sides, so both parties here, both the Labour Party and by Boris Johnson in Parliament's question time last week.
George Christensen, Member of Parliament from Australia. Could I have your reaction to the Australian Federal Police raids being deemed illegal the other day?
Well, look, in concert with the issue that we're talking about here today, which is the Julian Assange extradition case. I think that there is a very big difference between court-ordered searches and putting journalists in jail. Now, I don't have a great deal of an issue with a court ordering, and if it's a fair court hearing, that orders that there can be a search done of a media company or perhaps even a journalist's home. Although I do think that there needs to be fair process in there and natural justice in terms of a bit of a rebuttal to, you know, what could be coming in terms of a search. But that's it. If you're then going to find something that you say, well, you've obtained this and this is an illegal document and we're going to lock you up, that's where I draw the line. There's a very big difference between locking people up for doing their job and doing a search of someone's house that's ordered by the courts or at least approved by the courts.
One more question.
Yep.
Do you think that being a small or part of a small organisation makes Julian Assange more vulnerable? Is that perhaps why The Guardian, New York Times, who actually published first, those documents are not being attacked? Do they have strong unions? And
yeah, that's
should the
interesting.
little journalists, independents, be more worried than the big ones?
I think that, yeah, look, obviously there's been, you know, they've run a case against Julian Assange and Wikileaks, pretending that they're not real journalists, and it's just nonsense, and they've targeted them because, yes, they are different. They're online, they're small, they're fiercely independent, and they open themselves up to those charges, but those charges are baseless. And what does it matter? You know, if you're a blogger, a commentator, a journalist, a publisher, if you're publishing information in the public interest, you're reporting.
Thank you very much.